Men do not understand themselves, yet they dare to claim they understand women. The Cave of Illusions. Plato's most famous metaphor is the allegory of the cave. Picture this. Prisoners are chained inside a cave, facing a wall. Behind them is a fire. Between the fire and the wall, people pass by, casting shadows. The prisoners have never seen the real world. All they know are shadows, and to them, the shadows are reality. This is modern love. This is how most men and women live. The average woman isn't looking for truth. She's reacting to shadows of idealized love, of luxury, of rebellion against masculinity. Influencers cast the shadows. Social media fans the fire. The algorithms tell her what to desire, who to hate, and when to walk away. And you try to show her something real. You offer stillness, depth, presence, but she doesn't recognize it because she's never left the cave. She doesn't want to face the blinding light of self-responsibility. She doesn't want the discomfort of her own reflection. She wants drama that feels like passion, validation that feels like connection, fantasy that feels like freedom. And when you, the grounded man, step in with truth, you become a threat, not because you're wrong, but because you disrupt the game. Plato warned, when you try to free someone from illusion, they won't thank you, they'll hate you. And that's what happens when you show up with masculine clarity in a feminine world trained by shadows. You're not just ignored, you're rejected. Plato's warning about the untrained soul. Plato believed there was something far more dangerous than ignorance. An untrained soul, a person who has intelligence, beauty, charm, but no discipline, no internal order, no mastery of self. Sound familiar? Scroll through your feed, you'll see her. She's smart, articulate, stunning, maybe even successful. But underneath the filters and the affirmations, she's chaotic, addicted to attention, addicted to novelty, addicted to power she hasn't earned. And the men who chase her, they're not much better, because they too have left their soul untrained. They follow beauty instead of truth, pleasure instead of purpose, emotion instead of reason. Plato said the soul has three parts: reason, spirit, and appetite. When the soul is ruled by reason, the person becomes wise. When it's ruled by appetite, by cravings, by emotion, by impulse, they become slaves to their own desire. Now ask yourself, who's running the show today? How many women operate not from principle, but from mood? Not from integrity, but from impulse. They swipe, they ghost, they rage, they flirt with no intention and commit with no conviction. And when you ask for accountability, they say you're controlling. This is the chaos of the untrained soul. But here's the deeper truth Plato gave us. You can't love someone who hasn't governed themselves, because they'll drag you into their disorder. They'll resent your discipline. They'll test your limits, not because they're evil, but because they're untamed. You think your love will save her. You think if you just show her how stable you are, she'll match your energy. But that's not how it works. She must train her own soul, just like you must train yours. Otherwise, love becomes a war of appetites. You crave her body, she craves your attention, and both of you lose. Plato didn't hate desire, but he believed desire must be ruled. Otherwise, it consumes. And in today's world, most women have been taught to unleash it, not master it. When beauty becomes a tyrant. Plato never denied the power of beauty. In fact, he revered it. He believed beauty could lift the soul, could guide us toward the divine, but only if we approached it with wisdom. Today, beauty doesn't guide, it dominates. It no longer elevates the spirit, it enslaves it. Look around. Entire platforms exist to worship the female form. Men spend hours scrolling, liking, simping, hoping their digital devotion might be noticed. And women? They've learned to wield beauty like a weapon, not with malice, but with instinct. Because in a culture that rewards surface over substance, appearance becomes currency, validation becomes power, and the more seductive the image, the more control it brings. But here's Plato's warning. When beauty is not tempered by truth, when it's not guided by virtue, it becomes a tyrant, the kind of tyrant that doesn't scream, but whispers, that doesn't conquer through force, but through longing. It rules not with a crown, but with a glance. And men, desperate for meaning, for connection, for intimacy, they kneel, not knowing that what they worship is not the woman herself, but the illusion she projects. Plato said true love begins when one sees beauty, not just in form, but in soul, in virtue, in harmony. But if you stop at her lips, her curves, her carefully curated mystery, you've already lost. Because what you see is not always what she is. And when beauty becomes detached from the good, from the true, it leads you not toward wholeness, but into bondage. So ask yourself, is she pulling you toward truth or pulling you into orbit? Because the man who cannot see past beauty is not a lover. He's a slave. The shadow of the feminine. Plato wasn't naive. He didn't pretend that all beauty was good or that every woman embodied virtue. In fact, he understood that the feminine, like everything else in this world, had a shadow side, a hidden undercurrent that few men are trained to see. The shadow of the feminine isn't just darkness, it's distortion. It's when nurture becomes control, when charm becomes manipulation, when emotion becomes domination. And the tragedy? Most men walk straight into it with open arms, confusing shadow for depth and chaos for passion. In Plato's world, the unexamined feminine becomes a force of distraction, pulling men away from the good, the true, and the just. Not because she intends to, but because he never stopped to examine what she was drawing him into. We're told today that women are emotionally superior, that they're intuitive, compassionate, spiritually ahead. But Plato would ask, what happens when intuition is hijacked by insecurity? When emotion isn't tempered by reason? When influence is unearned but freely wielded? You see it everywhere. Women who destroy good men not with hatred, but with neglect. Not with cruelty, but with entitlement. Because they were never taught to examine themselves. Never taught to cultivate virtue. Only taught to desire power without price. And here's the cruel twist. The very men trying to do right, to be stable, to lead with principle, are the ones most often seduced and then resented. Because the shadow doesn't want order. It wants intensity. It feeds off confusion. It thrives in drama. Plato would say, if you love her shadow more than her soul, she will consume you. So how do you survive? You don't fight her shadow. You recognize it. You see the signs, the mood swings, the games, the power plays, and you don't engage. You don't explain. You don't try to fix her. You lead yourself. Because no woman can respect a man who gets lost in her chaos. She might use him. She might even enjoy him. But she will never follow him. You are not here to save her from her own reflection. You are here to master your own. The final trial. Plato's call to the philosopher king. Plato never intended his teachings to be consumed passively. He wasn't giving lectures for entertainment. He was issuing a challenge, a warning, and for those with ears to hear, a call to rise. You see, in Plato's Republic, the highest form of man wasn't the warrior. It wasn't the artist. It wasn't even the king. It was the philosopher king, the man who had both power and wisdom, the man who didn't just conquer others, he conquered himself. And that's where this all comes full circle. Because when it comes to women, to desire, to the chaos of beauty and mood and emotion, most men get lost. They either submit in weakness or dominate in fear. But Plato offered a third path, mastery, mastery over self. You don't outsmart women by lying to them. You don't control them by shouting louder. You don't win them by abandoning your soul to chase theirs. You win by becoming what few men dare to be, still, disciplined, immovable. You let her storms crash. You let her moods swirl. You let her beauty burn. And you stay exactly where you are. Because a woman who cannot move you is a woman who will respect you. And if she respects you, she might choose to follow you. Not because you demanded it, not because you performed for it, but because your presence is stronger than her chaos. This is what Plato meant when he spoke of harmony in the soul. You do not orbit the feminine, you draw her into your gravity, but that only happens when you are centered. When your soul is ruled by reason, not hunger. When your heart serves truth, not validation. You want to outsmart women? Then outgrow your need for them. Because once you no longer need her to validate you, she can no longer manipulate you. That's not cruelty, that's clarity. And clarity is what separates the distracted boy from the philosopher king. So decide now. Will you keep chasing what feels good, or will you become the man Plato saw coming, the one who could not be conquered by beauty because he had already conquered himself?